The floodwaters reached Kara's knees when she heard the sound. Not a roar, a whimper. She turned from the half-submerged truck she'd been trying to reach, her flashlight cutting through sheets of rain. Now, the beam caught something massive wedged between two collapsed buildings. Scales, dark crimson, slick with mud and blood. "Jesus Christ," she whispered. The dragon's wing lay twisted at an impossible angle, membrane torn and leaking violet fluid. Its chest barely moved, one eye cracked open, golden and fading, tracking her movement with the resigned awareness of a creature that knew death was close. Kara had 2 minutes, maybe 3, before the surge wave hit. The emergency broadcast had been clear. Higher ground or drown. She looked back toward the hills where the rest of the survivors had fled. Then, at the dragon. "This is stupid," she said, and waded toward it. The creature didn't fight when she pressed her hands against its neck, feeling for a pulse. Weak, erratic. Its scales were hot despite the cold water, fever burning through its massive body. She couldn't move it, couldn't save it, but she could stay. Kara climbed onto a chunk of concrete beside its head, close enough that the dragon could see her clearly. She stripped off her jacket and pressed it against the worst of the bleeding on its shoulder. Useless. Completely useless. But her hands moved anyway. "I'm here," she said. "You're not alone." The dragon's eye focused on her. Really focused. Intelligence burned there, ancient and vast. It made a sound deep in its throat, not quite a growl, almost like gratitude. The water rose to her waist. She kept pressure on the wound, talking steadily, her voice barely audible over the roar of the approaching wave. She told the dragon about her daughter, safe in another state, about the coffee shop she'd owned before the quake split the dam, about stupid things, human things, anything to fill the space where terror lived. The dragon's breathing steadied slightly. Its scales began to glow, faint at first, then brighter, pulsing with each labored breath. The violet blood stopped flowing. The torn wing shuddered and started knitting itself back together, tissue flowing like liquid metal. Kara stared, hands frozen on scales that now burned with inner light. The dragon lifted its head. The wave hit. Water exploded around them, a wall of churning death that should have torn Kara apart. Instead, the dragon's wings swept around her, creating a pocket of air as the world turned to chaos. She felt them rising, lifting, the dragon's body coiling with returning strength. When the water receded, they stood on top of the wreckage. The dragon looked down at her with both eyes now blazing gold. It spoke, voice like thunder across mountains. "I remember you, human. I will remember." Then it launched skyward, wing beats scattering the rain, and vanished into the storm. Kara stood dripping and shaking, watching until even the glow disappeared. That was 7 years ago. Now the ships hung over every major city on Earth, and humanity was screaming for answers. Kara's phone wouldn't stop ringing because the aliens had sent one message, broadcast in every language simultaneously. "We seek the one called Kara. She will speak for you. She will decide." The UN Security Council chamber had never been this quiet. Kara sat at the center table, 17 world leaders staring at her like she held a detonator. Outside the reinforced windows, one of the alien vessels dominated the skyline, a structure of impossible geometry that seemed to fold through dimensions human eyes couldn't quite process. "Miss Brennan," the Secretary General said carefully, "we need to understand what happened 7 years ago. I already told you I helped a wounded dragon during the Colorado floods. It flew away. That's it. That's it." The Russian ambassador slammed his palm on the table. "They arrive with enough firepower to glass our planet and demand you specifically. And that's it?" Kara met his glare without flinching. "I don't know what they want any more than you do. The dragon, said Ambassador Liu from China. Her voice measured. Describe it again. Every detail. Crimson scales, golden eyes. Spoke English before it left. Said it would remember me. Kara's fingers drummed against the table. Look, I'm a 43-year-old former barista from Boulder. I don't know anything about alien politics or whatever this is. You know enough that they crossed interstellar space to find you, the American president said quietly. His name was Cole Harrison, and unlike the others, he looked more curious than afraid. They've been here for 6 hours, haven't fired a shot, haven't communicated beyond that first message. They're waiting. Then let me talk to them. Absolutely not, 3 ambassadors said simultaneously. Harrison raised his hand for silence. What do you think will happen if you refuse? Kara looked at him, really looked. The man had the eyes of someone who'd made impossible choices before. I think they'll stop waiting patiently. As if summoned by her words, every screen in the chamber flickered to life. The image showed space, not from satellite feeds, from outside Earth's orbit. Hundreds of ships materialized, emerging from nothing like flowers blooming in fast forward. Each one dwarfed the vessels already hovering over cities. The formations spread across the orbital plane in patterns that seemed almost ritualistic. My God, someone whispered. The screens changed. Now they showed a chamber, vast and crystalline, lit by bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like heartbeats. At its center stood a figure. The dragon, larger now, fully healed, scales gleaming like polished rubies. It wore no clothing but somehow projected absolute authority. Its wings, membranes like stained glass, were folded with ceremonial precision. When it spoke, the voice came from every speaker in the building simultaneously. Kara of Boulder, we have come for you. The conclave awaits your presence. Harrison leaned toward Kara. You don't have to do this. Yeah, she said. I really think I do. She stood, ignoring the explosion of protests from around the table, and addressed the screen directly. I'll come, but I want guarantees. No attacks on Earth, no threats. And I want someone with me. The dragon's head tilted, an oddly familiar gesture that sent recognition sparking through Kara's memory. You saved my life when wisdom dictated you save your own. You demanded nothing, expected nothing. That is why we are here. That doesn't answer my question. A sound emerged from the speakers that might have been laughter. You may bring one companion. Earth will not be harmed. You have my word, and I am Nexus Prime, first wing of the Sovereign Fleet. My word is law across 17 galaxies. The chamber erupted in chaos. Kara ignored all of it, eyes locked on the screen. On those golden eyes that had looked at her with such gratitude 7 years ago in the mud and rain. All right, Nexus Prime, she said. Send your shuttle, but I'm bringing coffee because something tells me this is going to be a long conversation. The dragon's mouth curved in what was unmistakably a smile. The conclave has waited 3,000 years for this moment. They can wait while you enjoy your beverage. The transmission cut. Everyone started shouting at once. Questions, demands, threats veiled as concerns. Kara let it wash over her, thinking about a dying creature in a flood, about the choice to stay when leaving meant survival. Harrison appeared at her elbow. I'm coming with you. You're the president. And you're the only person in human history that alien royalty has shown up to honor you. Need someone who can think politically. He smiled grimly. Besides, if this goes wrong, better the president dies heroically in space than in a bunker while Earth burns. Cheerful, realistic. Kara nodded. Then, let's go meet the sky. Outside, the ships began to move, forming a corridor that stretched from the UN building straight up into orbit. A smaller vessel descended, sleek and alive with shifting light. The dragon had kept its word. Now Kara had to discover why that mattered enough to bring an armada across the stars. The shuttle's interior looked like the inside of a living creature. Walls pulsed with bioluminescent veins. The seats molded themselves to Kara and Harrison's bodies, warm and oddly comfortable. No visible controls, no pilot. The craft simply knew where to go. "This is insane," Harrison muttered, gripping the armrests as they lifted off. Through the transparent hull, Manhattan shrank below them, then the eastern seaboard, then the curve of the earth itself. Kara sipped her coffee from a thermos she'd grabbed on the way out. Still hot. Small mercies. You could have stayed. And missed first contact with an alien civilization, my approval rating would never recover. Despite everything, Kara laughed. The laughter died when they approached the flagship. It wasn't a ship. Not really. It was a city, a continent, a mobile world of towers and bridges that defied physics. Docking bays the size of football fields opened like mouths. Creatures moved along the exterior, some with wings, others with forms that hurt to perceive directly. The shuttle glided into a hangar where gravity reasserted itself with a gentle lurch. Nexus Prime waited for them. Up close, the dragon was magnificent, 4 stories tall at the shoulder, scales catching light and throwing it back in crimson fractals. Those golden eyes tracked their approach with keen intelligence. "Kara of Boulder," Nexus said, lowering his massive head in what could only be a bow. "You honor us with your presence." Kara stepped forward, aware of Harrison frozen behind her. "You said the Conclave has been waiting 3,000 years. For what?" "For proof that younger species can transcend their nature." Nexus straightened, wings unfurling slightly. "Walk with me. There is much you must understand before we arrive." The hangar opened into corridors that seemed to grow organically from the structure itself. Nexus moved with fluid grace despite his size. Other beings passed them, dozens of species Kara couldn't begin to categorize. Some nodded to Nexus with deep respect. Others stopped and stared at Kara with expressions she couldn't read. 3,000 years ago, Nexus began, the Conclave faced extinction. Not from war or plague, but from stagnation. We had conquered death, mastered energy, bridged galaxies. We had everything except purpose. "Sounds rough," Harrison said dryly. Nexus' tail swished, amused. "Your sarcasm is noted, President Harrison. But you understand existential threats. Your species lives with them daily. We had forgotten how." They emerged onto an observation deck. Space stretched before them, but not empty space. Structures floated in the void, massive beyond comprehension, connected by bridges of pure light. "The Accord was created," Nexus continued, "a test across time and space. When Conclave members reach their final century, they are sent alone to younger worlds, stripped of technology, given mortal forms. They live or die by the mercy of the species they encounter." Kara's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. "You're telling me you were testing us?" "No." Nexus turned to face her fully. "I was being tested. You were proving something far more important. I don't understand. 97% of species fail the Accord. They see a dying alien and feel fear, revulsion, or opportunity. They kill, capture, or abandon. This is natural. This is survival." Nexus's voice dropped to something almost reverent. "You saw a dying stranger in a flood. You had seconds to save yourself. You stayed anyway. You held my head and told me about your daughter while death approached. You expected nothing in return. Anyone would have done the same." "No, Kara, they wouldn't." "We have 3,000 years of data proving they wouldn't." Harrison had gone pale. "How many times has this test happened on Earth?" 73 times across your recorded history. Dragons, serpents, great beasts in folklore. Every major culture has stories of them. Only twice before did humans help instead of harm. Both times the circumstances were complex, the motivations unclear. Nexus focused entirely on Kara. You are the first to act with pure compassion. In the face of certain death, no witnesses, no reward, just kindness because kindness was needed. The observation deck began to fill with other beings. They formed a circle around Kara, all watching with intense focus. That's why we're here, Nexus said. The conclave votes today on humanity's fate. After 73 tests spanning millennia, the question is simple. Does your species deserve to survive its adolescence? Or should you be contained before you spread violence across the stars? Contained? Quarantined to your system. Permitted to grow no further. It's not cruel, Kara. It's careful. Young species are dangerous. They destroy themselves or others. The galaxy has seen it countless times. And you're deciding this based on me? One person? One person who represents what your species could become. Nexus lowered his head until his eye was level with hers. I have argued for you. I have shown them what you did. But I am one voice among thousands, and many have seen human cruelty firsthand. Your wars, your exploitation, your capacity for violence. Harrison stepped forward. Then let us speak for ourselves. Let the conclave hear from more than one human. They will. But first, they will hear from her. Nexus looked at Kara with something that might have been hope or might have been fear. The chamber is prepared. 73 species have representatives present. They will ask questions. They will judge. And you, Kara of Boulder, will determine whether 7 billion humans remain children locked in their nursery or grow to walk among the stars. The beings around them began to move, forming a processional. Kara drained her coffee, set the empty thermos down, and straightened her shoulders. Then, let's not keep them waiting. The conclave chamber was a cathedral of impossible scale. Tiers rose in all directions, defying conventional geometry, each level holding delegates from species that made Kara's mind reel. Crystalline beings that chimed like bells, entities of pure energy contained in geometric shells, creatures with too many limbs, too few dimensions, forms that shifted between states of matter, and at the center a platform barely 20 feet across for her. Nexus guided Kara forward while Harrison was escorted to an observation alcove. The dragon's presence felt protective, but he stopped at the platform's edge. From here, you stand alone. It is tradition. Kara stepped onto the platform. It rose smoothly, lifting her toward the chamber's center. Thousands of eyes, sensors, perception organs she had no name for, all focused on her at once. Quote, a voice spoke, resonating from everywhere and nowhere. Kara Brennan of Earth, you stand before the galactic conclave as representative of humanity. Do you accept this burden? Her mouth went dry. I'm not a politician, not a diplomat. I'm just someone who helped when help was needed. That is precisely why you are here. The voice shifted, became multiple voices speaking in harmony. We are the eldest. We have guided civilization for longer than your species has existed. We have one question before judgment begins. Why did you stay? Kara looked up at the tiers of alien faces because leaving felt wrong. Silence. Then a delegate spoke, a being that looked like flowing mercury given form. Elaborate. You faced certain death. Self-preservation is the foundation of all biological life. Your choice violated basic survival instinct. Maybe, Kara chose her words carefully, but we're not just survival instinct. Yeah, I was terrified, Yeah, I knew I'd probably die, but that dragon was alone and in pain, and I couldn't walk away from that. What kind of person would that make me? A living one, another delegate said. This one resembling a mantis constructed from obsidian. Your species wages war constantly. You destroy your own environment. You exploit the weak among you. Yet you claim compassion? I don't claim humanity is perfect. We're not. We're violent and selfish, and we make terrible choices. Kara felt anger rising, pushed it down. But we're also capable of incredible kindness, of sacrifice, of changing. You've watched us for thousands of years. Haven't you seen that too? A ripple passed through the chamber. Delegates conferred in languages that sounded like music, mathematics, controlled chaos. The eldest spoke again. We have observed kindness, yes, but often motivated by social reward, genetic imperative, or reciprocal expectation. Your action had none of these factors. You saved Nexus Prime knowing you would die, knowing no one would witness, knowing he was not even of your world. This troubles us. Troubles you? Why? Because it suggests your species operates on principles we do not fully understand. The mercury being flowed closer to the platform's edge. We can predict behavior, driven by survival, reproduction, dominance. These are universal constants, but pure altruism toward the unknown? This is rare, dangerous, unpredictable. A new voice cut through the chamber, sharp and brittle. A creature like animated crystal spoke. 73 tests across Earth's history, 70 failures, 2 ambiguous successes before this one. The data overwhelmingly suggests humanity's baseline is hostility toward the unfamiliar. Then why are we having this discussion? Kara shot back. If you've already decided we're failures, why drag me across space for show? Nexus spoke for the first time since she'd taken the platform. Because 3 instances of genuine compassion in 3,000 years is statistically significant. It suggests evolution, growth, the possibility of transcendence, or aberration. The crystal being countered, outliers that prove the rule rather than challenge it. The tears erupted in debate. Delegates argued in cascading waves of sound and light. Kara stood in the eye of it, heart hammering, watching humanity's fate get dissected by beings who'd been ancient when humans still lived in caves. Enough! The eldest's voice cut through everything. Kara Brennan, you will now face the testimony. Representatives will present evidence of human behavior. You will respond. The conclave will judge whether your species deserves membership or containment. A hologram materialized beside the platform. Battlefield footage. Hiroshima, the Holocaust, Rwanda, Syria. Drones raining fire, children in rubble. Humans inflicting horror on other humans with industrial efficiency. Kara's stomach twisted. Defend this, the obsidian mantis demanded. Explain how a species capable of such systematic cruelty deserves to walk among the civilized stars. She wanted to look away. Couldn't. I can't defend it. Those are atrocities, sins we'll carry forever. Then you admit your species is fundamentally flawed. Yes, we're flawed. We're capable of monstrous evil. Kara's voice strengthened. But we're also capable of recognizing it, of calling it wrong, of fighting against it. Those images, they happened because some humans became monsters, but they were stopped, remembered, condemned by other humans who refused to accept that horror as normal. After millions died, the crystal being said coldly, yes, after millions died, we learn slowly. We fail constantly. But we learn. Kara pointed at the hologram. You want to judge us by our worst moments? Fine. But judge us by our best ones too. Judge us by the medics who ran into gunfire to save enemies, The strangers who hid refugees at risk of death, the scientists who cured diseases for free, the teachers who spent their own money to feed hungry students, the ordinary people who choose kindness every single day even when it costs them everything. The hologram shifted. New images. A firefighter carrying a child from flames, Doctors Without Borders treating patients in war zones, a man standing before tanks in Tiananmen Square, the photo of Earth from space, pale blue dot. These two are humanity, Kara said quietly. The worst and the best, tangled together. We're not perfect. We're not even good yet. But we're trying. Doesn't that count for something? The chamber fell silent. The eldest spoke, and for the first time, Kara heard something that might have been respect. It counts for everything, Kara Brennan. The question is whether it counts for enough. The hologram dissolved, replaced by something that made Kara's breath catch. Earth, rotating slowly, beautiful and fragile against the void. We will now present the council's dilemma, the eldest said. Observe. The image split. On one side, Earth continued its peaceful rotation. On the other, a simulation began to play. Ships left Earth's orbit, human ships, sleek and bristling with weapons that looked nothing like current technology. They spread across the solar system, then beyond. Colonies sprouted on Mars, Europa, Titan. Faster than light drives ignited, humanity reached the stars. And everywhere they went, conflict followed. Mining operations that stripped worlds bare. First contact scenarios that ended in gunfire. Human factions warring with each other across multiple systems while alien species watched with growing alarm. The simulation showed Earth's descendants becoming exactly what the Conclave feared, a plague of violence spreading through the galaxy. This is projection analysis, the Mercury being explained, based on current human behavioral patterns, technological trajectory, and historical precedent from 47 other species. The probability of this outcome is 70 to 3%. Kara felt sick. That's not inevitable. No, the eldest agreed. It is merely likely. Which brings us to the alternative. The other half of the display changed. Earth remained, but now a shimmering barrier surrounded the solar system. Ships approached from outside, but none entered. None left. Quarantine, the obsidian mantis said. Humanity remains confined to your system. You may grow, develop, even thrive within those boundaries, but you will never touch the stars beyond. You will never threaten the greater galaxy. It is a mercy, truly. Most violent species destroy themselves. We would spare you that fate by making us prisoners, by giving you time to mature. Perhaps in 10,000 years your descendants will have evolved beyond their violent roots. Perhaps not, but the galaxy will be safe. Harrison's voice cut across the chamber from his alcove. You're talking about condemning billions of people for crimes they haven't committed, punishing children for what their parents might do. We are preventing catastrophe, the crystal being responded. Your species has demonstrated its nature across millennia. The pattern is clear. The pattern is changing, Kara said, voice rising. You said yourself 3 instances of compassion in 3,000 years is significant. That means we're getting better. Doesn't that earn us a chance? The eldest voice carried weight that pressed against Kara's chest. A chance to do what, Kara Brennan? To prove you are the rule rather than the exception? To demonstrate that one human's kindness reflects a species-wide transformation? The pressure increased. Or a chance to spread the violence we have witnessed across the stars, to make our failure to contain you a tragedy that echoes through centuries. The tears erupted again, delegates arguing, gesturing, their various methods of communication creating a storm of sensory input. Then Nexus Prime moved. The dragon stepped onto the platform beside Kara, wings spreading wide. The chamber went silent immediately. I invoke advocate's right, Nexus declared. I will speak for this species. Shock rippled through the tears. The eldest voice carried surprise. Nexus Prime, you have already testified. The Accord does not grant you further voice in judgment. The Accord grants me life because of this human's choice. I claim that debt now. Nexus's golden eyes swept the chamber. You debate probabilities and projections. You weigh humanity's sins against their potential. But you ignore the most important data point, which is, the crystal being demanded, that Kara Brennan's choice was not an anomaly. It was evolution in action. Nexus turned to the assembly, voice carrying across the vast space. I have studied Earth's history since my rescue. Yes, humanity is violent. Yes, they war and destroy. But examine the trend. 3,000 years ago, slavery was universal among them. Now, it is condemned worldwide. 200 years ago, women were property in most cultures. Now they lead nations. 70 years ago, they split the atom and nearly destroyed themselves. They stepped back from the brink. The dragon's scales began to glow, casting crimson light across the chamber. Every century, humans expand their circle of moral concern. First family, then tribe, then nation, then species. Now they debate the rights of artificial intelligence, of animals, of ecosystems. They are learning to see beyond themselves, slowly, painfully, but undeniably. Pretty words, the obsidian mantis said, but words do not negate violence. No, action does. Nexus looked at Kara. She had no obligation to me, no kinship, no shared history. I was alien, unknown, possibly dangerous. Every instinct should have told her to flee. Instead, she stayed. She comforted a dying stranger while her own death approached. That is not aberration. That is the future of her species struggling to be born. One human shaded, the mercury being countered. You base your argument on one human's choice. Yes, because that is how evolution works. The exceptional individual reveals what the species can become. Kara Brennan showed me humanity's potential. Give them time and others will follow her example. Deny them that time, and you condemn billions for lacking what they have not yet had the chance to develop. The eldest spoke, voice thoughtful. You risk much for them, Nexus Prime. If humanity proves violent in the stars, your reputation will not survive the consequence.
I know.
Nexus's voice was steady. I stake my honor on them anyway, because Kara Brennan taught me something I had forgotten in my millennia of life. That mercy is not weakness. That kindness in the face of death is the highest form of courage. That a species should be judged not by what they are, but by what they are becoming. Silence filled the chamber. Then delegates began to move, some rising, some descending, forming new configurations. Kara realized with a start that they were voting, their positions in the chamber indicating their choice. The eldest watched it all, then spoke. The conclave is divided, unprecedented in modern memory. We require adjudication. How does that work? Kara asked quietly. Nex's voice was tense. Trial by testimony has failed to produce consensus. Now comes trial by choice. What does that mean? The dragon looked at her with something that might have been regret. It means, Kara Brennan, that you must choose humanity's fate yourself. The platform shifted beneath Kara's feet. The chamber reconfigured itself, tiers rotating, delegates repositioning until two distinct groups formed. On one side, beings whose forms suggested aggression, power, dominance. On the other, creatures that seemed almost fragile, built for thought rather than conquest. Trial by choice is ancient, the eldest explained. When judgment cannot be reached through debate, the decision falls to the one with most at stake. You will choose Kara Brennan, but not blindly. 2 pedestals rose from the platform. On each a crystalline sphere pulsed with inner light. The left sphere contains humanity's freedom, the eldest continued. Touch it, and the quarantine is lifted. Your species will have access to faster-than-light technology, star charts, trade routes. You will be welcomed into the galactic community as probationary members. You will have your chance to prove Nexus Prime's faith justified. Kara stared at the sphere. Freedom, the stars, everything humanity had dreamed of since first looking up at the night sky. And the right sphere? She asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Safety. Touch it, and Earth is quarantined peacefully. The barrier is unbreakable but permeable to communication. You will watch the galaxy, learn from it, be protected from it, and it from you. Your species will have 10,000 years to mature in isolation, perhaps longer, however long it takes. That's it? Freedom or prison? No. The eldest voice carried a weight that made Kara's bones ache. There is a third option. Touch neither sphere. Walk away. Refuse to choose. What happens then? The conclave votes immediately on extinction protocols. Humanity is judged too dangerous to exist and too unpredictable to contain. Your species is eliminated as a threat to galactic stability. The chamber went deathly quiet. Harrison's voice cracked across the silence. You're forcing her to choose between freedom and safety under threat of genocide? That's not a choice, that's coercion. Yes, the eldest said simply. It is also reality. The strong dictate terms to the weak. This is universal law. Better we present the terms honestly than disguise them as benevolence. Kara's hands trembled. You're serious. If I refuse, you'll kill everyone on Earth. We will sterilize a threat before it spreads. It is not cruelty, Kara Brennan. It is gardening. We remove the invasive species before it chokes out everything else. The eldest paused, but we give you the choice first. Because Nexus Prime has argued you deserve that much. Because your action in the flood suggested your species might be capable of wisdom. This isn't wisdom, Kara said bitterly. This is blackmail. Wisdom is choosing the lesser evil when perfect good is impossible. The mercury being flowed closer. You face the choice every advanced species eventually confronts. Freedom with risk or safety with constraint. Most choose poorly. We are curious to see what you decide. Nexus said nothing, but his golden eyes watched her with an intensity that felt like physical touch. Kara looked at the spheres. Freedom on the left, quarantine on the right, death in walking away. How long do I have? As long as you need, the eldest said. Though Earth's governments are growing restless, your absence has been noted. Panic spreads below. Each hour you deliberate, more chaos builds in the world you are trying to save. Perfect. Decide the fate of humanity while people riot in the streets. Kara closed her eyes, thinking, not about the choice itself, but about what led here, about a dragon dying in floodwater, about staying when leaving meant life, about choosing compassion over survival. She opened her eyes. Tell me the truth, not political games or careful words, the actual truth. What do you think will happen if you give us the stars? The chamber stirred. Delegates looked at each other. Finally, the obsidian mantis spoke. We believe there is a 60% chance your species will eventually war with another civilization within 500 years. We believe there is a 30% chance that conflict will escalate to genocide. We believe there is a 10% chance you will mature peacefully and become productive members of the galactic community. And if you quarantine us, 90% chance you remain stable within your system. 8% chance you destroy yourselves anyway through internal conflict or environmental collapse. 2% chance you break the barrier through sheer scientific advancement, though that would take millennia. The numbers hung in the air like a death sentence. So freedom means we probably fail violently. Quarantine means we probably stagnate safely. Kara looked up at the tears of alien faces. And you're making me choose. Yes, the eldest said, because this is the burden of sapience. Because the universe does not care about fairness. It only cares about consequence. Choose. Kara walked to the left sphere, touched it lightly with her fingertips. The crystal hummed. Images flooded her mind. Humans on distant worlds. Ships breaking light speed. First contact with species beyond imagining. Conflict, yes. Violence, certainly. But also cooperation. Art shared across species barriers. Science advancing through cultural exchange. Humans learning, growing, becoming something more than they were. And the possibility, slim but real, of failure, of war, of becoming the monsters the Conclave feared. She pulled her hand back, walked to the right sphere, touched it. Different images, earth enclosed in shimmer. Humanity trapped but safe. Generations living and dying, knowing the stars existed but remained forever out of reach. Would they grow wise in isolation? Or would they tear themselves apart from frustration, like caged animals gnawing their own limbs? 10,000 years, maybe more, maybe never. Kara stepped back from both spheres. I can't, she whispered. Nexus's wings drooped slightly. Harrison made a sound of protest from his alcove. You refuse to choose? The eldest asked. You understand what that means? I understand. Kara's voice grew stronger. But you're asking me to play God with 7 billion lives, to decide whether they get freedom or safety, whether they sink or swim. That's not my right. That's not anyone's right. Then you condemn them to death through indecision. No, Kara faced the eldest's presence directly. I condemn your system. You want me to choose because it absolves you of responsibility. If I pick freedom and we fail, you can say you gave us a chance. If I pick quarantine and we stagnate, you can say you offered safety. Either way, you get to pretend you're not tyrants deciding which species lives free and which lives in cages. The chamber erupted. Delegates surged forward, voices rising in anger, surprise, something that might have been approval. The platform shook under Kara's feet. Silence. The eldest's command cracked like thunder. You dare accuse the Conclave of tyranny? Yeah, Kara said. I do. Because that's what this is. Dressed up in pretty words about wisdom and gardening, but tyranny all the same. You have the power, so you make the rules. You decide who gets freedom and who gets locked away. You call it mercy, but it's just control. And what would you have us do instead? The crystal being demanded. Allow every violent species free access to weapons that could shatter planets? Stand aside while children play with antimatter? Kara smiled, and it was not a kind expression. I'd have you take the same risk you're asking me to take. Trust, hope, faith that we can be better than our worst impulses. She looked at both spheres, then deliberately turned her back on them. I won't choose, not because I'm indecisive, because the choice shouldn't exist. Either you believe in us or you don't. Either you're brave enough to give us a real chance or you're cowards hiding behind probability. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Nexus Prime began to laugh. It started as a rumble in his chest, building to a sound like rolling thunder that echoed through the chamber. His wings spread fully, scales blazing with crimson light. She is magnificent, he said, voice filled with joy. Did I not tell you? Did I not say she would show you what humanity could become? The eldest's presence seemed to contract, pulling inward. She has refused judgment. The protocols are clear. The protocols, Nexus said, still laughing, are about to change. He turned to face the full assembly. voice carrying absolute authority. I invoke right of champion. I claim Kara Brennan's choice as correct and stake my life on humanity's potential. Any who would vote for extinction must go through me first. The chamber exploded into chaos, and Kara realized she might have just started the first interstellar incident in human history. The tears of the conclave erupted in pandemonium. Delegates roared, chimed, pulsed with bioluminescent fury. The obsidian mantis's limbs clattered against its platform. The crystal being's form flashed warning colors. Dozens of species Kara couldn't name reacted with what could only be outrage, but none moved toward Nexus Prime. The dragon stood at the platform's edge, wings fully extended, scales burning like forge-heated metal. His presence filled the chamber with something primal, something that transcended politics and protocol. Right of champion has not been invoked in 4,000 years, the eldest said, voice tight with something that might have been anger or might have been awe. You risk everything, Nexus Prime. Your position, your house, your very existence. I risk nothing compared to what she risked for me. Nexus looked at Kara. In the flood, she had seconds to choose, life or compassion, survival or sacrifice. She chose mercy without hesitation, without calculation. Now I return that gift. The mercury being flowed forward, form rippling with agitation. This is madness. One dragon cannot stand against the full conclave. Right of champion requires you to personally defend humanity against all challengers. Do you understand the precedent this sets? Perfectly. Nexus's smile was all teeth. Any species who votes for human extinction must send their champion to face me in single combat. First blood, first submission, or first death. Ancient law, unbreakable law. A new voice spoke, deep and resonant, from a delegate that resembled living stone. You were Sovereign Fleet's greatest warrior before you took the Accord. Even diminished by age, few could match you. This is not courage, Nexus Prime. This is exploitation of personal power. Yes, Nexus agreed simply. Just as the Conclave exploits its collective power to threaten species into submission, I merely use the tools available to me as you use yours. Kara found her voice. Wait, you're going to fight for us? If necessary. Nexus's tone softened when addressing her. But I suspect it will not come to that. Right of champion serves a purpose beyond combat. It forces the conclave to consider whether their conviction is strong enough to risk their finest warriors, to decide if human extinction is worth bleeding for. The chamber had gone quiet again. Delegates whispered among themselves, conferred, calculated. The eldest spoke. This changes the parameters entirely. Any vote for extinction now carries personal cost. Personal risk, as it should, Nexus said. As Kara Brennan pointed out, we make life and death decisions from positions of perfect safety. Perhaps it is time we had skin in the game, as humans say. The obsidian mantis clicked forward. You shame us, dragon. Good. We have grown comfortable in our tyranny. Shame might remind us what we have become. Minutes passed, then hours. Delegates left their tiers, formed clusters, argued in languages that made reality bend. Kara stood beside Nexus, exhausted, terrified, but unwilling to sit while her species' fate hung in balance. Harrison had been brought down from his alcove. He stood with them now, silent but solid. Finally, the eldest spoke. The conclave has reached decision. Through right of champion, extinction protocols are nullified. No delegate wishes to face Nexus Prime over humanity's fate. A pause, heavy with meaning. However, this does not grant humanity unrestricted freedom. The original choice remains. Quarantine or probationary membership. Kara Brennan, you must still decide. Kara shook her head. No, I already told you. I know what you said, and you were correct. The choice should not fall to one individual. The eldest's presence seemed to shift, become less absolute. Therefore, we offer a third path, one that has never been proposed before, because no species has ever earned it. The spears on the pedestals dissolved. A new image formed between them. Earth, the conclave flagship in orbit, a stream of data flowing between them. Monitored integration, the eldest explained. Humanity receives faster-than-light technology, access to certain trade routes, and limited diplomatic contact. In exchange, conclave observers remain in your system. They report on your development, your conflicts, your growth. Every 50 years, we reconvene to assess your progress. Supervised probation, Harrison said. We're free, but watched. Yes, if you demonstrate sustained, peaceful development, restrictions ease over time. If you prove the violent projections correct, quarantine is reimposed. You earn freedom incrementally through demonstrated wisdom. Kara looked at Nexus. The dragon nodded slightly. It is fair, he said quietly. More than fair given the circumstances. And if we refuse monitoring? Kara asked. Then quarantine is automatic. No species receives unrestricted access to the galaxy without accountability. That is not tyranny, Kara Brennan. That is basic safety for all civilizations involved, including yours. Kara thought about Earth, about humanity's history of violence and beauty tangled together, about the billions of people who deserved a chance to reach for the stars but hadn't earned unconditional trust. Can I confer with President Harrison? Of course. They stepped to the platform's edge, speaking in low voices while the conclave watched. This is the best deal we're getting, Harrison said. Maybe the best we deserve. Observers watching everything we do, reporting back. Judging us? We already spy on each other constantly. At least these observers will be honest about it. Harrison smiled grimly. And maybe having alien oversight will force us to behave better. God knows our own oversight hasn't worked great. Kara laughed despite herself. You're saying we need alien babysitters? I'm saying we need accountability. And if that comes from dragons who can cross galaxies, maybe we'll actually take it seriously. She nodded slowly, turned back to the eldest. We accept monitored integration. On one condition. State it. The observers don't just watch. They teach, share knowledge, help us understand what peaceful species look like in practice. You can't just judge us and expect us to figure out how to improve on our own. Silence. Then the mercury being flowed forward, form rippling with what might have been approval. Wise. Very wise. You acknowledge ignorance and request guidance rather than pretending you need no help. Yes, we will teach. It serves us to have humanity develop properly. The eldest's voice carried warmth for the first time. It is decided. Humanity enters monitored integration. Kara Brennan. Your choice honors both your species and the conclave. You have given us much to consider about our own methods. The chamber transformed. Delegates rose from their tiers, moving toward the platform not with hostility, but with something like respect. Several approached Kara directly, offering greetings in various forms. Nexus lowered his head beside her. You did well. Better than I dared hope. I didn't do anything except refuse to play their game. Exactly. You forced them to change the rules. That is how evolution works. His golden eyes gleamed. Your species will stumble. You will make mistakes, but you will learn. I believe that now more than ever. Harrison clapped Kara on the shoulder. We should get back to Earth. People are probably panicking, probably. Kara laughed. Definitely. The return journey passed in a blur. Shuttle descent. UN building. Cameras everywhere. Questions shouted from every direction. Kara stood before the assembled world leaders and media, exhausted but clear.
We have 50 years to prove we deserve the stars.
she said simply. Let's not waste them. 3 months later, Kara stood in her rebuilt coffee shop in Boulder, watching the news on the mounted screen. The first conclave observer had arrived. Not a dragon, but something resembling a six-armed scholar with skin like blue coral. It was giving a lecture at MIT on faster-than-light theory while students frantically took notes. In orbit, construction had begun on Earth's first FTL ship, designed collaboratively with alien engineers. The coffee shop door chimed. Nexus Prime entered, having shifted to a more compact form barely 10 feet tall. Dragons, it turned out, could adjust their size within limits, useful for navigating human architecture. I thought you'd gone back to the fleet, Kara said, pouring him a custom blend she'd been developing. Dragons apparently loved caffeine. I requested extended assignment as primary observer. Someone needs to ensure you stay on track. He accepted the cup delicately in one claw. Besides, Earth is interesting, chaotic, unpredictable. That's one word for it. It is meant as a compliment. Predictable civilizations stagnate. You keep surprising us. He sipped the coffee, made a pleased rumbling sound. This is excellent. They stood in comfortable silence, watching ships launch from Cape Canaveral on the screen. Human-made ships enhanced by alien knowledge, carrying the first delegations to nearby star systems. Thank you, Kara said quietly. For believing in us? Thank you, Nexus replied, for teaching me that some debts transcend species. You saved my life in a flood. I saved your species in a vote. We are even now, are we? Kara smiled. Because something tells me this is just the beginning. Nexus's laugh rumbled through the shop. Indeed, the sky kneels before you, Kara Brennan. But now comes the hard part. What's that? Living up to it. Outside, the first stars were appearing in the evening sky. Human ships moved among them, tentative but hopeful, carrying a species that had earned its chance through one woman's impossible choice in the rain. The flood had passed. The future had arrived. And somewhere in the vastness above, the galaxy watched and waited